Hi everyone and welcome to Safe Diving. So when you're first starting out, a lot of divers are keen to invest in their own scuba diving equipment, which is great. Rental equipment sucks, but at that point when you're very just starting out, you don't really know what to look for or whether that fancy sounding feature is worth the extra money it seems to cost. You'll find dozens of what should you buy first videos online, and I've actually done one. It's up here, only I focused on the other essentials that you really should be investing in. But for this video of the series, I'm going to focus on the foundations, the general rules that you should be thinking about on how to choose the right place to buy from and the brand to look for, and then in the next coming videos I'll break down each category and get more specific into what you should be looking for in a fin, for example, because there's just way too many features and things to look for in each select piece of kit, and I can't do them all in one single video. It would just be hours long. So the order in which you buy your stuff is very personal and very much depends on the diver themselves, but to save yourself some money, it's important that you buy right the first time and that the gear is suitable for the scuba diver that you are going to be, not necessarily the diver that you are right now. If you have your eyes set on instructor or technical, then it's worth saving your money for a little bit longer and actually investing in the right equipment the very first time. Otherwise, you'll just end up with a closet full of second-hand dive equipment that you don't use anymore and buying the more expensive kit later anyway. So think about what kind of diver you want to become in the future. Like if you want to explore caves on side mount, then your jacket style BCD is just going to be left gathering dust. So that being said, try not to skip too many steps and go straight to the expensive stuff. Don't get your open water and then buy a twin set. But you wouldn't pass your driving test and just buy a Ferrari. You have to drive the small hatchback for a little bit first to improve your skills. But let's take a look at what you should be looking for when buying your first set of dive gear so that you can make a better decision. The first thing to make sure that you get the right gear is to do some homework. You can buy plenty of your dive gear online, but don't be impulsive and just buy the first thing that catches your eye. Some things you can buy online, but some things you really shouldn't, because it's important to make sure it suits you or fits you properly, or that you can get suitable aftercare. There's no point investing in a brand of regulators if there's nowhere near you who can actually service them. Too many traveling divers come across this, where they buy their regulators and then take them with them to work in a foreign country where that brand doesn't exist and doesn't really have any service centers. So before you go throwing your credit card numbers around, check out your local dive centers. They'll usually mention which brands they can get in and service on their website. Just because they're a scuba diving center doesn't mean that they can sell you every single piece of dive kit though. They may be limited in which brands they can actually stock and get in for you. Most of the big interesting brands actually have territory rules to avoid competition. So if they have one dive center in an area, they won't sell to another dive center in a certain radius. This has a few benefits for the dive center and the brand in that there's less competition, so that the dive center is more likely to buy more of their brand and sell more of that brand. For you, it means that you may have to travel a little bit if you're stuck in the middle of two dive centers. It also means that if you want to mix up your brands, you may have to travel backwards and forwards between a couple of dive centers to get exactly what you want. On the flip side of this, if there's a certain brand that you like the look of and that vibes with you, then somewhere on their website you should find a dealer locator of everybody that sells their equipment. Type in your postcode or zip code and it'll show you where your nearest dealers are so that you can touch and feel the stuff in person. If you're feeling that particular brand, then it may be worth traveling that little bit further for a better selection. Dive centers also get different grades based on how much they sell that certain brand. So even though they might be able to sell your brand, they might not be able to get the entire range. So check to see what tier dealer they are on that dealer locator. It may also mean that they are, or they get a greater margin as well the higher up they are, so they're a little bit more comfortable offering discounts. So if you've been cruising around social media and you found a brand of dive equipment that catches your eye, then it's usually pretty easy to find someone that actually sells their brands. Smaller independent brands can be harder to find dealers for. There can be some great sort of gold out there, but you have to kind of put the legwork in and actually find someone who actually sells you the stuff. A lot of scuba diving web pages are pretty 2003 as well. They may make great scuba diving equipment, but they don't make great websites, so give them a little slack. In our modern world, you can buy all of your dive equipment online, and it can be a fairly thrifty way of buying your dive gear because you can shop around and find the best place for all the different pieces just in your pajamas, but I don't recommend that you buy everything online. It is important that you build a relationship with your local dive centre because they are going to be the ones that are going to be your best resource for setting up your equipment, servicing your equipment, and of course repairing your equipment. You also need to double check where your stuff is coming from when you're ordering stuff online. You can very easily buy from a completely foreign website today without even knowing it, which technically could void a lot of warranties because a lot of warranties only apply to the country that you bought it from, and you can often meet resistance taking faulty gear into a dive centre you didn't buy something from. Buying from abroad not only means that you might not get any kind of support, it can take much longer to receive your equipment, and the money that you save from buying abroad is just completely wasted if you need to return it. International shipping isn't easy or cheap. So first of all, what shouldn't you buy online? So personal stuff that needs to fit you, that kind of touches your skin, I like to buy in store. So your mask, very important to try it on so that it fits you and suits you. Your wetsuit or your dry suit, sure you can send it back if it doesn't fit, but you usually have to be the one who pays the return shipping costs. And most dry suits won't fit in an envelope, so it's an expensive mistake. Regulators kind of sit on the fence for me. If you buy from the right place, then you can buy them online, sure, but there are a few caveats. As I mentioned earlier, make sure that you can get them serviced after you get them. If you're buying them online, make sure that you know if they're going to be assembled and adjusted or not. Regulators often need a little bit of tweaking when they first get assembled and after a few dives as well, so it's best to have someone close by to actually tweak them. It's usually free from the place that you bought the regulators from, but you'll usually need to pay a third-party technician to tweak your regulators if they were the ones who didn't sell you the regulators. Everything else you can pretty much buy online. I mean, a dive computer is going to be much the same wherever you buy it, sort of online or in store, only you won't have anyone there to show you how to use it. BCDs are fine, you just have to be comfortable with fitting your own inflator hoses to your regulators, that's not too tricky. Fins, sure, you can buy these online, you'll just have a wider choice of colours and sizes buying online. Just check which size is best for the boots that you'll be wearing. Most size charts are assuming that you're wearing a pair of 5mm boots, but some boots may mean that you need to go up or down a size if you're wearing a dry suit, for example. Most other dive gear like dive knives, DSMBs and spools, they're all fine to buy online. Just don't be that person who walks into a dive centre, spends 2 hours with an instructor kind of working out what's the best thing for you, and then walk out and buy something online because it's a little bit cheaper. Just think of that extra bit of money as paying for their experience and their knowledge. You'll also be blacklisted at that dive centre. And also don't try and play one dive centre off another one because we talk to one another. Some brands will offer a range of dive equipment, so they cover all bases, like Scuba Pro. Scuba Pro make pretty much everything from regulators and BCDs to wetsuits and masks, so you can cover yourself head to toe all in Scuba Pro gear. Other brands specialize, like Waterproof and Fourth Element, they only make exposure protection like wetsuits and dry suits. Sunto, they only make dive computers. If a brand specializes in one particular area, then they're going to be pretty good at it. That's not saying that generalized brands are bad though. I mean, Scuba Pro, Mares, Aqualung, they all make great dive equipment. They just have large enough teams to diversify because they've just been around forever. The bigger, older, established brands are still making dive equipment. They have all the means to make decent dive equipment in all different categories because they were kind of there at the beginning, so they've had time to branch out. Some brands actually tailor their ranges for different divers. The best example is Oceanic, Hollis and Atomic. They're actually all owned by one company, Hewish Outdoors, but their ranges of equipment are focused to different divers. So Oceanic is aimed at recreational divers at reasonable prices. Hollis is aimed at divers who want to move into the technical realms, and Atomic is the premium range. So spend some time finding the brand that suits you best for the diving that you'll be doing. Most divers naturally gravitate to a certain brand because it matches their diving vision, so spend some time on their social media pages and equipment pages, just seeing what kind of jives with you, and then you'll find a brand that kind of matches your vision. Also spend some time to look at the brand's warranty and servicing guide for their big ticket items. It's unusual, but you can usually find sort of some gear that develops a fault, in which case it's important to know if you're covered. Some brands will have a relatively meager warranty and all will include a user error clauses, so if you rip it trying to pull your wetsuit on, that's your problem, unfortunately, and we can tell. It's better to be honest and ask for help to fix a problem than to try and pretend that it just kind of arrived that way. Other brands may have longer warranties, so you can rest easy knowing that should a stitch pop or seam leak, you can actually get it repaired, or if you're incredibly lucky, replaced. Bear in mind that you may have to register your dive gear to activate a warranty or even extend a warranty, so when you buy a dive computer or a regulator, try to register it as soon as you get it. There are some perks and you'll kick yourself in 13 months' time because you were just too lazy to fill out a form online. For your regulators, check that servicing schedule though. Most are 1 year or 100 dives, whichever comes first, but others can be much longer or include some kind of parts scheme where it can work out much cheaper in the long run. So it's worth kind of looking for the service schedule and just see if, oh, maybe I should go down this route because in the long run it's going to work out cheaper. All dive gear will have price ranges. You'll get cheap dive computers and expensive dive computers, cheap bolt snaps and expensive bolt snaps. Every piece of gear that you find will have a cheap version and then just a range of prices above it. The trick is to find that kind of sweet spot where you're getting the most bang for your buck. So I've been working in dive centres for the past 10 years now, so I've been exposed to all sorts of different dive equipment, from cheap and nasty to the really pricey stuff, and I kind of see them in different tiers now. You get that budget range, which does the job, but it's not great stuff and doesn't tend to last that long. The materials tend to be a bit cheaper and the finish on them is relatively poor. They'll do what you need, but only just. When you hold them up against their more expensive equivalents, it's really obvious which is the budget one, and after a year or so, it's really obvious. The premium range has all of the bells and whistles you could ask for and the price tag to match as well. They're made from the best materials and finish. The premium ranges are pretty swish if you have the budget for them, but in a lot of cases I'd be too worried about damaging them or even just getting them dirty in the water that I dive in. And then you have the kind of Goldilocks range in the middle, which is practical, it's affordable and realistic. They have decent materials and features, but they're not gold plated or anything. This is where most divers tend to aim at, and it's a good place to aim. There are some places that you can cut some corners. Snorkels, for example. I can appreciate an expensive snorkel, sure, but when it comes down to it, the one that I throw in my kit bag costs less than a tenner. If you know that you're only ever going to be doing recreational dives, then you don't need a $1,000 dive computer. Base level dive computers will have everything that you need for a dive. Surely they don't have Bluetooth, but is it that hard to use a pen and paper to record your dives off your computer? It's not that hard. I wouldn't scrimp on your mask, your regulators or your exposure protection. You know when you're breathing from a cheap regulator or wearing a cheap wetsuit. It's far better just to save a little bit longer and get the legit gear. You'll look good, you'll feel good, and you'll want to go scuba diving more. So far, I've only really mentioned shiny new dive equipment, but you can of course buy second-hand gear. This can be a double-edged sword though, especially when you're new to the sport. You can grab an amazing deal, but you can also be out of pocket with some really duff equipment. It's important that you see every part of the equipment before you send any money, because they're not going to show you the tear on the back of the suit or the rust on the bottom of the cylinder in their initial pictures. If you're buying online, then ask to see as much of the suit or whatever it is before actually sending any money. Nowadays, it makes a lot of sense to actually ask for just a video chat with the equipment so that you can ask to see it all over, you can see it pressurized on a tank, or to see if the dive computer actually turns on when you push a button. Regulators, ask when they were last serviced and see how old the regulators are. The older regulators get, the harder it is to get replacement parts for them. So now you're stuck with the old regulators that don't even work. Cylinders, they need testing every so often to make sure that they're still strong enough to not go bang when you fill them with gas. Ask to see the test stamp, which will be stamped into the shoulder of the cylinder, nowhere else. And if there's no pressure inside it when they open the valve, be very careful. Completely empty tanks are likely to have rust inside, so if they open the tank valve and it doesn't hiss, be very, very careful. It's very much up to you. Of course you can buy second hands, just be aware that you won't have any warranty. You don't really get the same returns policy that you can expect from a legitimate dive centre. You can't send something back because it doesn't fit. I mean, my first dry suit was second hand and it was great. Not for the first time I dive it though. It needed a new neck seal, so don't expect second-hand gear to be perfect, and look up the gear online first so that you can work out roughly how old it is and sort of how much it's actually worth, and if that dive equipment is actually aimed at you. It might seem like a great deal, you're getting this dry suit or whatever it is, but if it's not specifically marketed at you, it's not really worth that reduced price because you're just going to get an uncomfortable suit. At certain times of the year, you will find some dive centres offering money off offers or special package prices. If you're in the market to buy dive equipment but you're not in any particular hurry, then it is worth signing up for a few emails on some online dive stores. You'll get plenty of pesky emails, sure, but every so often you'll get that one email that tells you that they have a special 10% off everything offer, or a buy this and get that free. Black Friday week is usually popular to get cheaper dive equipment, but remember the whole point of Black Friday is the shop's way of clearing out old stock that they don't want, either because something new is coming in to replace it, or they've had it in stock for so long they can't really get rid of it. Christmas and New Year's are a good time to grab a deal, and these are the times when you'll often find free accessory offers from the brands. They'll offer, if you buy this, then you'll get that for free or at a greatly reduced price. Free octo offers and free transmitter offers are a great way to save some money, but pick your timing. Sometimes a free whatever it is means that a new version is about to come in and replace it. Don't be surprised if there's an offer on a dive computer with a free transmitter, and then in a month's time an upgraded version of that computer or transmitter comes onto the market. You won't be disappointed with your new dive computer, it's just you'll get that kind of new gear envy because you bought this and now the Novo version's out. If you know for a fact that you're going to be buying all of your dive equipment at some point, then buying equipment packages can be a very cost-effective way of doing it. When you're buying your BCD and your regulators together, for example, you can get the whole package at a much cheaper price than if you buy all of the stuff separately. Not all the time though, trust me, it's rare that pricing is actually automated because we don't trust computers to sort out pricing, so if a guy like me hasn't updated all of the prices, it could be a lot cheaper to buy the parts separately. And finally, I come to the worst time of year to buy dive gear, and that's in the very first few months of the year or when the equipment is released. Most price lists are done yearly, and the prices change between October and February depending on the brand, and it's rare to see the numbers ever get smaller, so you'll start to see prices going up around that time of year. Brand spanking new dive equipment tends to hold its price for a little while, So give things a few weeks and the smaller dealers will get frustrated and lower their prices eventually to try and drive some sales. But this can depend on the brand. Some have evolved sort of higher prices to dealers for the first 6 months, so that way they're less likely to drop for the first 6 months, and others have managed to find a kind of respectability where their street price doesn't really drop over time compared to some brands that just tend to be a free-for-all at all times, and it's very much up to the dive centre whether they want to just drop their prices or not. So there are a few of my general tips to get you started. The next video in this series is going to take a look at fins. If you want anything else in particular, like dive torches or dry suits, then let me know down in the comments below, but trust me, they're all on the list. But if you want something in particular first, I'll bump it up the list, because it'll take some time for me to write them all up and actually film them all. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you'd recommend to a new scuba diver. Have you got any equipment regrets in your closet, or any tips on when or where to buy your dive gear? Let's all group together and help the class in general. Thank you for watching, of course, safe diving.